9 years, they've gone from firing the first Indigenous Attorney General to keeping the first fake Indigenous Minister of Employment. When will the Prime Minister fire this phony minister?
Yeah!
We're back to question period this week, where there were more fireworks than Canada Day. Conservatives were playing target practice, and all of their vitriol was focused on the fake, phony, and fraudulent Randy Boissonnault, to the point where Greg Fergus nearly lost control of the House.
Let's take a look.
Maniac masquerading as a firefighter, this time on immigration. He blames bad actors for his decisions that destroyed our immigration system. He decided to increase and open the door to 726% more asylum claims. He decided to approve 211% more international students. He decided to lift the ban on temporary foreign workers in communities with already high unemployment. If the Prime Minister is hunting for the quote-unquote bad actors who ruined the system, will he have a look in the mirror?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Trudeau's the worst actor of them all.
Oh, and he's the drama teacher. He's supposed to be the best one. Anyway,
what's that saying? If you can't do, teach?
I don't know. He can't do either. So, but this is actually really interesting, considering we just dropped our video about literally this. So evidently Pierre's team was watching this absolutely atrocious and cringy, sit down with dad talk that Justin Trudeau put out, where he's trying to spin the disaster of immigration on everybody else. He starts by saying, well, we made some mistakes, but then as you listen to it, he's like, but we did this and it was the right thing to do, and we did this and this was the right thing to do, and all of these other people did this, but then we did this.
Yeah, it's the bad actors that took advantage of the system, not the fact that you guys had not put the proper safeguards in place in order to stop bad actors from abusing the system.
So remember, international students was around 350,000 under Harper. 2023, 900,000.
That's huge.
Permanent residents under Harper. This is like normal immigration. 260,000 in 2014 and 2015. Wasn't increasing it. Housing completion started to increase, started to catch up. In 2023, it was somewhere, I think it was around 470,000. So, yeah. There's nobody here to blame about why the immigration system is in the state that it is, except yourself.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think we'll take any lessons from someone who spent the last 20 years lighting fires in the House of Commons. That's it. We put forward a plan 2 weeks ago to reduce immigration levels by 20%. Canadians expect us to be responsible and to react to their needs. That's what we're doing with this plan. The Parliamentary Budget Officer himself has said that this new plan will reduce housing needs by 50%. That's what Canadians want. It's responsible.
Very good. 20% is not enough when you've more than doubled it. Like, even in some streams of immigration, it's like triple.
Well, and again, okay, so you're cutting immigration down to 376,000, and you're saying, oh, well, this is going to reduce housing demand by 50%. It's still astronomical in terms of the demand because of what you've done.
We're still not building enough houses. There's still too many new people. There's new Canadians being born, and there's new people coming into the country. There's too many people to keep up with the supply for housing.
Like, folks, look at this. Like, I'll go back to this. This is Canada's permanent resident increase target since 2015. Here's the Century Initiative.
You don't see where it skyrockets?
Look at the percentage increase. That's the red line. It's 87%. This is the increase in their permanent resident target versus housing completions, folks.
The housing line is the orange one on the bottom.
So you have a astronomical amount of new permanent residents. It's like 435,000, something like that. And then the housing completions is 240. It's like half of that. So what are you talking about?
Yeah, this is an absolute nightmare. This is why we have a housing crisis.
Well, and this is why we have channels like ours peeling back the veil and exposing all this double talk and crap that they're putting out there. Because if you listen to Mark Holland, he's like, oh, well,
everything's fine.
Dropping 50%, no problem.
No, 20%. It's doubled and in some cases tripled, but they're dropping it by 20%, and that's going to fix everything.
No, his point is that it's going to reduce the housing demand by 50%. You know,
how?
Because they're bringing in less people, right? They're still bringing in 375,000. Like, that's where they're dropping it to.
So there's already not enough houses being built for the people that are currently in the country. And they're saying that by dropping the people coming in is going to decrease the demand by 50%. Even that math doesn't add up because it's one house for every 2 people. So if you want to be generous, you could say that it's decreasing the housing demand by 40%, but you're not counting for the people being born or the people moving out of mom and dad's house.
Well, this is where they're playing games with the language, because it's going to reduce the demand by 50% of the future people they were going to be letting in the first place. Yeah. It's a joke.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Employment Minister first denied that he and his company were profiting off government business, and then text messages showed the contrary. They referred to a Randy. Well, he claimed that it was another Randy. We now know there is no other Randy. We know he falsely claimed he was Indigenous in order so that his company could steal resources that were meant for real Indigenous people. And now his company address matches the address of a place that was the location of 2 cocaine busts. Any one of these things would be a resigning offense. Why won't he resign now?
Order. The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Okay, so when Eva Karina Gold is like looking over and saying, I don't want to get up and answer that one. And even the Speaker of the House is fumbling over the words to try and get to the answer. Yeah, not looking too good for you, Randy.
Mr. Speaker, I know the person referred to in today's article. I've never met that person. I've had no dealings with her whatsoever. Those are the facts.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Apparently the person he doesn't know is himself. He says that he's not the Randy in the text messages, but his own business associates say there is no other Randy. He says that he said that he was Indigenous in order that he could get grants and contracts that were meant just for Indigenous people. Now he admits he's not Indigenous at all. And now, while his company has the same address as a place that has 2 cocaine busts, he says he doesn't know the person involved in that address either. Does this minister even know who he is?
Okay, and this is when you reduce an argument to absurdity. You are left with literally the absurd if the truth is absent. So this is the problem when you get up and you stand up and you like, oh, I didn't know. Dude, you are caught.
Yeah, I mean, the excuses they give in committee were first that, well, it was an autocorrect, and then I can't tell you who it was supposed to be because I need to protect that person.
Well, first it was a different Randy, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was no, I was lying to Global News, and it was an autocorrect, and now it's somebody else's name, but I'll give that to you later. Well, I'm not going to give it to you later, so I'm going to rather go on contempt of Parliament. Oh, and then there's additional WhatsApp messages that have been released that Randy Boissonnault didn't give to the Ethics Commissioner when the Ethics Commissioner asked for all of the text message exchanges between him and Stephen Anderson. So
I think it just shows everybody that honesty is always the best policy.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, the article states...
And ask all members, please. There's the Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development from the top.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know the person referred to in the article today. I've never met her. I've had no dealings with her whatsoever. The article states that fact, and that is the fact.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After the Prime Minister took his private jet, burned 105 tons of jet fuel, and emitted 300 tons of greenhouse gases to go down to Brazil, he claimed that Canadians who are opposed to his carbon tax are just confused by disinformation. No, Canadians aren't stupid, Mr. Speaker. They know that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has calculated that 100% of middle-class Canadians pay more in the tax than they get back. The Prime Minister already also said, though, that this will be the subject of the next election. I couldn't agree more. So why don't we have a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Minister for Order. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources. And
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, it would be nice if the Leader of the Opposition was not spouting disinformation and misinformation in the House. At the end of the day, 8 out of 10 Canadian families, the vast majority of Canadians, get more money back. It is those that actually live on the most modest incomes that are the best off as a result of the price on pollution. But I would also say it is a price on pollution. It is about addressing climate change, something that organization across the way simply has no idea how to do and does not care.
So that's a lie, and I am surprised that they keep repeating that lie after a second Parliamentary Budget Officer's report comes out that says that middle-class Canadians are worse off. And even if you just take the amount that you're paying on, say, gas for your car and gas to heat your home, or maybe if you cook with gas as well, and your rebate, you got to remember that there's HST or GST that you're paying on the carbon tax, and that's not being accounted for.
Yeah, remember, it was calculated that over $4 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars in tax on the carbon tax is actually not getting returned to you. That goes straight to the government coffers. Right. Only the carbon tax actually goes back to them. And I don't know if the Parliamentary Budget Officer is just tired of getting this question from Canadians, but in the recent report, they literally put it on the front page where it says, overall, Canadians are worse off when you take in all economic factors, which you have to.
Right, because, I mean, if I go buy an apple at the store, maybe it used to be 80 cents, but now with the carbon tax, it's $1. You have to factor that in. Even though I'm not directly paying carbon tax on that apple, the store is, the farmer is, the trucker to get it to the store is. So we have to take all that into consideration because it's the end consumer who really does end up paying that carbon tax.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
The Liberal minister from Alberta is a fake and a fraud. He said he was not the Randy involved in his company, but we know that there's only one Randy. He said he wasn't involved in his company at the cabinet table.
I'm going to ask colleagues. Today we've been skating close to the line in terms. Excuse me, colleagues. I will start my comment again if you would give me the privilege of listening. At several occasions today, we've been skating close to the line in terms of what's acceptable language. The Honourable Member from Leeds Grenville, I think, has skated over that line and accusing a direct member. Can I ask the Honourable Member to withdraw that comment and start his question from the top, please?
Restart, Speaker, that this Liberal minister from Alberta has been implicated in fraud and media reports. Today, we've seen that. It's very clear.
I'm just going to, I'm not certain if I was having trouble hearing the member. I don't think I heard the withdraw. If you could withdraw and start again, I'd appreciate it. If members were not to take the floor while a member is being recognized, the speaker will be able to hear the member.
Sounds like Fergus is losing control of the House. Just a little bit.
Sounds like just a bit.
Just a tiny bit. It's funny, we're sitting here watching and I was like, I don't think Barrett's going to withdraw that statement. And technically he didn't.
Well, I guess we'll see.
Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Withdrawing the previous words, Speaker, we'll talk about this Liberal minister from Alberta who has been implicated in media reports in fraud. Some of them he's even apologized for. He misrepresented his identity, claiming to be Indigenous, trying to steal contracts from people who are in fact Indigenous. This same minister said that he wasn't the Randy at his own company. We know that there was only one Randy at that company. It's pandemic profiteering. We know that there's allegations of fraud. Why is it that this Prime Minister just won't fire that minister?
The honourable member, the honourable minister for employment and workforce development.
Michael Barrett's such a class act. He withdrew the statement, but he said pretty much the same thing in a way that wouldn't get him called out by the Speaker again.
He's like, okay, so fine. I will not call him a fraud, but I'm going to describe all the fraudulent things that he's actually done. Ergo, he's a fraud.
Well, and it's all on the record now.
Mr. Speaker, what the member opposite just said is simply not true.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
What?
So, okay, let's back up a little bit. What everybody is freaking out about, I think, is this National Post article that came out today. And let me read the subheader to you. Well, I'll read the header and the subheader. Header says, Cabinet Minister's firm shared mailing address with a person named in cocaine busts. The subheader says, a company co-owned by Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault shared a post office box with a woman who was detained in 2 major drug busts. So, basically, Boissonnault's company shared a post office box with this woman who was detained for drug charges. Now, is it possible that Boissonnault didn't know this woman? I guess. But in my opinion, it's equally as possible that he did know this woman.
Well,
why would you share a post office box with somebody you don't know?
Here's the other question. What odds do you have with all of the people in Canada where you're just magically sharing a post office box with somebody who coincidentally is involved in drug trafficking?
Well, and the other thing, maybe larger businesses are a little bit different than small businesses like Northern Perspective, but I know when I signed us up for our post office box, I had to give them the names of the people who were permitted to access that box.
Right.
Which, Ryan and me, right? So there's not like some unknown person who can have access to our box.
Well, and this is the thing, because allegedly this person knew Steven Anderson, so Randy Boissonnault was going to most likely try and claim, well, I didn't know her, Steven did.
Possible, right? We don't know yet.
But still, like, do you want to, as a business of 2 people, by the way, Randy Boissonnault and Steven Anderson, you want to all of a sudden allow a third person that's allegedly not even involved in that company that you don't know about, you're just okay with them sharing that same post office box, and you don't know them. Post
office boxes are not super expensive. Like, it's probably around $200 for the year.
So, yeah, sketchy as all heck.
It's unbelievable that with the cocaine connections to the Liberal minister from Alberta, that those Liberals, that Prime Minister, want to allow him to continue to be in Cabinet. He said that he was Indigenous to try and steal contracts from individuals who are Indigenous. That's okay as long as you are a Liberal. The company is involved in more than 6 lawsuits because of fraud, and that's okay as long as you're a Liberal. They came before committee and said things that we now know weren't true, like it must have been some other Randy. If he won't resign, why won't this Prime Minister fire that fraudster?
Okay, so he was doing well right up to the end where he called him a fraudster. I imagine Greg Fergus is going to try to call him out.
Oh, probably. You know, I really feel for Barrett because his job is as the ethics critic, and to see these liberals break ethics rules again and again and again with zero repercussions, that's got to be so frustrating.
Again, members at the very last possible moment used a word which would not be considered acceptable. Can I just ask the honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Island and Rideau Lakes to please withdraw that last word?
I'll withdraw the last word. He should be fired.
I thank the honourable member. The honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, what the member opposite said, once again, is not true.
I'm trying to decide if this tactic of just saying that's false or that's not true, if that's going to work in favor for Boissonnault or if it's going to work against, because if you try to refute it, then it might seem like possibly you're lying or you're trying to twist the facts or there is something there. But if you just say, well, that's not true and dismiss it, maybe that's the wise route. Maybe that's the only route at this point.
I think it's the only route at this point because he has tried to dismiss before that. And what all that has done is basically he's told more lies. That's the problem because he just keeps going on. So I think, honestly, he's cornered, he's caught, and I think this is just all he has left. His boat is taken on water, and he's about to go down with the ship.
I legitimately think that the best thing he could do, and I would be saying this if this was a Conservative or a Liberal candidate, doesn't really matter. I think the best thing for him to do right now would be to resign.
And, and the way to do that is, in order to shield my government from any more of these untrue allegations, I'm going to be resigning as cabinet minister so I can deal with these allegations myself and fight them because I know them to be false. But I will do that and not be a distraction to this government.
That would be the best thing to do if you were Boissonnault, but I guess time will tell.
Well, it's hard to do when you don't really have any bone of integrity in your body. But again, look at his boss.
The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The minister from Edmonton is a fake and a phony. He said that he was not the Randy...
I'm going to ask, this is a couple of times that I've asked the honourable members.
So first Barrett, and now his teammate taps in. Cartagenis. There's a couple times you've asked. They're not telling lies here.
Right. If it's accurate, is it allowed?
Well, that's the thing.
Green Book says no, though. Green Book says you can't call other members' names or impugn their character, even if they deserve it.
Yeah, even if they impugn themselves, ironically.
I'm going to ask the honourable members again to remember when they speak directly to members, they have to be, of course, extend to them all the respect that each member, as members, are deserving of. So I'm going to ask the honourable member, please, to rephrase this question to start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, this minister deserves to be criticized in the People's House, the House of Commons. He said he was not the Randy involved in his company, but we know there's only one Randy at the company. He said he wasn't involved in the operations of the company, but text messages reveal that he is. He said he was Indigenous to profit from government contracts, trying to steal from First Nations communities. When will the Prime Minister fire this phony for making false claims to steal from First Nations?
Garn is on fire today.
Yeah, he's really good with the alliteration.
Holy.
Yeah, he's a very good orator.
And this is the interesting thing. It's like they've been saving all of this up.
It's pent up after a week of constituency week.
Well, and
right?
in weeks and weeks and weeks of investigation, right?
And months and years of corruption of this Liberal government.
So, everyone's just had enough, and this is why it's boiling over. And Randy, as well as the rest of the Liberal Party, are now completely under siege.
The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The company did actually receive funding from the Government of Canada. The Minister of Employment's business partner claimed that their company was fully Indigenous owned. How would he have gotten that impression? Maybe because the Liberal Party repeatedly said that the minister was Indigenous. Now, it is possible to get kicked out of the Liberals' Indigenous caucus, not for corruption, but for refusing to participate in corruption, as Jody Wilson-Raybould found out. After 9 years, they've gone from firing the first Indigenous Attorney General to keeping the first fake Indigenous Minister of Employment. When will the Prime Minister fire this phony minister?
I'm going to encourage all members to be more judicious in their use of their words and referring directly to other members.
Do you know what? It is in the Green Book, right?
It is.
He has to follow the rules. He's a referee.
But I think he knows darn well that Garnet Genesis is not going to withdraw his comment.
No, I wouldn't if I was Garnet.
Well, because again, they're sick of it. They're absolutely sick of it. And, in my opinion,
the Conservatives should be government right now. The people want it. It's just the NDP are hanging on like rotting fruit, right? That just won't fall from the vine.
Well, what I was going to say is, in my opinion, they're not really saying anything that's too unparliamentary because it's been verified. So...
Verified or not, you're not allowed to say it.